Initiating moisture.
You may not have invited me to your lacrosse house party to do keg stands with the boys and butt chug natty light with the bros, but I hope you kept your door unlocked, cause I'm coming in anyway with the moisties, baby. That's fucking right. Today we're looking at the top 5 worst movies of 2018. Let's just go ahead and kick this shit right off. Number 5, Pacific Rim 2. This movie was the most disappointing movie I've seen this year since I really liked the first Pacific Rim. This one took the stinkiest shit on top of it that I could ever imagine. I honestly would have been less disappointed if they had just turned the sequel to Pacific Rim into a porno, or even like Pacific Rim Go or some shit. Anything that wasn't what we got with Pacific Rim 2. It is truly abhorrent. It completely changes what Pacific Rim was about, which is just about, you know, rock and roll, titties, mech action, kaiju fighting shit, you know, spitting blood, spitting titties out and everything, and it turned it into like a goddamn summer camp for kids, which also sometimes has robots fighting shit. Underwhelming, horribly executed, none of the characters were likable or good, all of the action was bad, occasionally there were some decent things to look at, but when it was sprinkled with all these little diarrhea flakes that were on it, it just makes it unpalatable. Really bad movie, extremely disappointing. Just don't make a Pacific Rim 3. I'd hate to see it turned into like a musical on ice that has like a Gundam in the middle of it or something. It's just an insult what they've done to Pacific Rim. Moving on to number 4, I Feel Pretty. This one's on here because, well, it's Amy Schumer. Do I really need to justify it more? Do I even need to say more? It's an Amy Schumer movie. But it's the worst Amy Schumer movie. I've seen quite a few. I even suffered through her stand-up just to kind of get a taste for what the fuck goes on there. It's as bad as you'd expect, both in the stand-up and this movie. It's horrible. It's a movie that's supposed to celebrate, like, being comfortable in your own skin, but it makes being fat and everything like the enemy. It makes people feel bad about their body. There's nothing positive about this movie. It's a horrible movie with awful jokes. There's not a whole ton of vaginas in the movie, because it's PG-13, so she can't say, my vagina, my pussy. Pussy smells like barnyard animal, cow manure. My pussy takes the dick pussies. You know, she can't say her normal stand-up shit in the movie, so that's good. But it's still a really bad movie overall. Even the most die-hard Amy Schumer fans were able to muster enough brain power out there to form an opinion of the movie, and their opinion of it was negative, which is very rare because they'll pretty much defend Amy Schumer to the grave. It's wild, and even they didn't like this movie. Obviously, I can understand why it's super fucking bad. Moving on to number 3, Winchester. I personally think putting horror movies in the top 5 worst list is cheating, but god damn it, do they really fucking deserve it. Horror movies these days are always so bad. They're just so fucking bad. Winchester's no exception. It's really bad. I'm gonna spoil the conclusion. I'm sure none of you give a shit. He shoots the ghost to kill it and win the day. And the whole thing about it, it's just all bad, man. The set's cool. I like the set of the Winchester Mansion. That's the only compliment I could ever give this movie. It's the only compliment anyone could ever give this movie. Nothing scary about it. Nothing at all. It's not scary. It's not enjoyable. It's not so bad it's good. It just fucking insults the viewer's intelligence to even be sitting there knowing you wasted money watching it and wasted time. Horrible fucking movie, even for horror movie standards. Moving on to number 2, Truth or Dare. What do you fucking know? It's another horror movie. You're gonna notice a little pattern. Yeah, Truth or Dare's even worse than Winchester. Truth or Dare has a horrible concept. You know, a Truth or Dare game where you gotta do the dares or you gotta tell the truth. And it takes it to a level that you would never think human beings were capable of reaching. You didn't think anyone could be that fucking stupid when writing a script or a story. Every character makes the stupidest little Snapchat filter smiley face thing. That was their gimmick. Then they ask a truth or dare question. None of the dares or the truths are scary or interesting or well thought out. And it's just so poorly written. Every character fucking sucks asshole. And I'm just going to give you a little sneak preview here. I'm going to spoil the ending again here. They confront the demon of Truth or Dare. The Truth or Dare evil demon lord of Christmas. As they're directly confronting them, they get asked a Truth or Dare question. The last one of the movie, all they had to do was put something in a jar that they were 2 seconds away from doing. The demon asked a guy a Truth or Dare question, and instead of just picking truth, which is just harmless, you just tell the truth about something, he chose dare, and the dare was to kill the guy that was about to save the day. I mean, like, what the fuck were you thinking? His reasoning for not choosing truth and saving the world was because he didn't want anyone to have to do a dare. What a fucking hero. What a martyr. I'm sure everyone's gonna really like that decision in that universe. Super fucking bad movie. Awful all around. Moving on to number 1, and a surprise to no one, the worst movie of this year is also a horror movie, and I'm sure most of you can already guess what movie gets it. It's Slender Man. Slender Man is a truly abominable train wreck of cinema. A movie that is 7 years past when its character was popular. When Slender Man was popular was 2011. This movie came out in 2018. Nobody gives a fuck about Slender Man anymore. Memes die by the hour. Moth meme died in 30 seconds. Every meme is so fucking short-lived in 2018. No one's gonna give a shit about a 7-year-old one. And especially when the movie's as bad as this is, it's an absolute train wreck. Edited poorly, thrown together awfully, the story makes no sense. Slender Man's not even the bad guy, trees are the bad guy. They make nature the evil force in the movie, not even Slender Man, he's just kinda there. He's probably fucking afraid of the trees too. Every character sucks asshole, none of the characters make smart decisions. It's so fucking bad. I'd rather play every goddamn Slender Man game back to back to back to back instead of watch this movie for a second time. It is that fucking bad. It is not even so bad it's enjoyable. It's so bad it's frustrating to watch and sit through, and it fucking hurts to sit there. It burns your goddamn eyes. A horrible movie, absolutely deserving of the number 1 spot in this year's Moistie's top 5 worst movies of the year. We had a lot of really shitty stinkers in the horror movie department, that's for goddamn sure. But I do believe this top 5 list is backed up by scientific data that can 100% prove these are by far the 5 worst of the year. Thank you for tuning into the Moisties. See ya.
Initiating moisture.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 Moisties. Jeff Keighley wasn't available to host it, so I am here instead. I was actually going to wear a suit for this, but not only do I not have one, didn't want to fucking wear one. Plus, suits looked really goofy on me. I look like a middle schooler in professional football pads. So we're going to get right into this with the 5 worst movies of 2019. Kicking this shit off is Men in Black International. Yeah, it's just a bad movie, which is why it's on this list. Why is it a bad movie? Well, because it fucking sucks. Everything this movie attempts to do, it doesn't do well. Not even close. All of its attempts at comedy are horrible. Its humor is super dated and feels like something you'd find on 9gag, but not even like surface level 9gag. I'm talking like some shitty, deplorable 9gag community comments. Something really bad and not entertaining whatsoever. That's the kind of humor this movie has. None of the jokes land. And aside from that, it's just not a good movie to look at. It's not well structured. The plot's boring, predictable, and not fucking good. The common theme about this movie is everything it does, it sucks at. They took like the least talented people in every category it tried to hit. Who's the worst writer for comedy? Sign him up. Who fucking sucks at sci-fi plots? Hey, perfect, get him on over here. We'll assemble a goddamn Avengers team of shit writers and make a shit product. It's not good. Visuals at times were passable and okay. I like some of the weaponry they showed, but that's about it. There's really nothing else this movie has. There's no substance. By the time you leave the theater, you've forgotten half of the scenes because they're so generic and just so by the numbers and safe. It's just not what you want to see, especially from a franchise like Men in Black. I love Men in Black 1 and 2, 3 not as much, but I still think all 3 hold up well enough to be enjoyable, especially the first 2. The comedy in those movies is still good. This doesn't have that, even though the main character is supposed to be like this side-splitting, hilarious dude, which he's not at all. That's number 5, baby, and we're just getting started. Number 4. This one's going to catch a lot of people by surprise. A little blindside curveball subverting your expectations, Game of Thrones style. Lion King. Lion King is it sets a horrible precedent for Disney. It rewards plagiarism. They plagiarized themselves. This movie is the result of Hollywood higher-ups copying their own homework and changing it very slightly and making it worse. This movie is the exact same movie as the original cartoon Lion King, just animated differently. And yes, the original Lion King is fucking incredible. It is a movie that stands the test of time and is still a great movie today. And all they did was take that exact same movie and change its animated style. And this movie has raked in well over $1 billion, one of the highest grossing movies of all time. That is horrible. This shows Disney all they have to do is revisit all of their old properties, which are incredible movies, and just change something slightly, its visuals. They went from 2D cartoon animation to photorealistic animation, and that realistic animation ruins all of the emotion the cartoon was able to capture. Because realistically, lions can't emote. If a lion saw its father fall off a cliff, it wouldn't, be raising eyebrows and going nuts like it does in the cartoon. You can't see that emotion on a lion's face. So what does it do? It just stares blankly as something tragic happens. So you lose that kind of emotion from the characters in your film, and it just loses a huge element of what made the original Lion King so powerful. So it is a worse movie, objectively, than the original one, and yet it still fucking crushed it. And you can't even call it like a bad movie because it's Lion King, exactly the same as it was, which is a great movie. Just this is a little worse and just upgraded, not upgraded, downgraded to a modern time and resold, repackaged. It's the equivalent of getting a 1995 Toyota Camry and painting it red and then calling it a 2019 Toyota Camry. And then people buy the shit out of it. It's silly. That's why it makes this list. Moving on, the third worst movie of this year is one that hurts me to say. It's Replicas, starring Keanu Reeves, a movie I bet 4 of you have seen, and only performance, at least Keanu was putting nuts to butts and at least trying to make something out of this pile of dog shit, but it's just not enjoyable. And the CGI at points is laughable. They have like a robot towards the end that looks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson from Mummy Returns as the Scorpion King. It's fucking goofy. Shitty movie, that's why it earns number 3. I'd go deeper into it, but I know none of you care about Replicas, and I don't think anyone should go watch it as a so bad it's good movie. Just know, it's not a good movie, that's why it makes number 3. Moving on to number 2, they have characters that are making the worst decisions I've seen since Slender Man. It's stupid. It's really stupid. You have kids that are getting harassed by a ghost bride woman, and for some reason they don't tell anyone about it. They have these burns on their hands and shit from the ghost woman grabbing them to try and take them to the fucking ice cream store, and they don't tell how they got those burns to the mother or anyone else. They're just like, oh, yep, I must have been playing Fortnite too hard and got a little burn on it. They don't tell anything, although it would have really helped if they did. The ending of the movie is some nonsensical shit garbage too. It's the worst horror movie of the year and comfortably earns the second spot on the worst films of the year because there is almost no compliment. There is no compliments I can give this movie, really, at all. And number 1, I'm sure a lot of you have guessed the number 1 worst movie this year, but it's a new one. It's Cats. Cats easily takes the worst spot this year for the worst movie of the year. It is fucking terrible from start to finish. I made a whole video on exactly why it is so bad at every possible angle you could possibly try and digest it from. You could stick your finger in every single butthole and vagina hole you can find in this movie and never find one that feels good. It is horrible. There's nothing to like about this movie. The music is bad. The music is like Red Hot Chili Peppers. You never know when one song ends and the other begins. It's just this convoluted mess of characters coming in that look like shit, and these songs that sound like shit in an environment that kind of looks like shit, but at times doesn't look super shitty, if you know what I mean. Like there's sometimes where in the right light, a single lamppost might look kind of cool if you squint a little bit at it. At no point, though, are you ever enjoying this film. There's no reason for its existence. It's basically like watching a play because it doesn't really do anything that a play couldn't do besides add the worst CGI faces movies have seen since the 1980s. It's a real stinker. This is a shitty Supreme movie. It is bad, bad, bad. Bad movie, and again, not even one that I'd recommend as a so bad it's good. This is a movie that you should avoid, and if you value your time at all, you wouldn't watch. It's just hugely disappointing. And I have never seen Cats. I don't even like the idea of the play. I think it just sounds boring, and I was disappointed by this. I thought this would be like an original Sonic the Hedgehog type movie, where the face was so goofy that you could at least laugh at that with these faces, but at some point they just start to haunt you. It's all you start to see while you're in the theater. The music fades out and all you're seeing are these weird faces making weird motions, doing these weird snapping motions with their shoulders, not showing their tits, but jiggling their tits through this cat suit. Fucking Rebel Wilson's cat declothes her cat suit and she's got another cat suit underneath her previous cat suit skin that she's just shed as if she's molting. Horrifying movie. Cannot believe that one got made, and definitely the worst movie of 2019, and I can say that with confidence. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this year's top 5 shittiest movies of 2019. The Moisty for the worst one obviously goes to Cats, but we had some very strong competitors this year. And yeah, that's about it, everyone. Thank you. See ya.
Initiating moisture.
It's that special time of year again, everyone's favorite time of year, where the family gathers together and plops their swamp asses down on the couch to watch the Moisties. It's a tradition as old as time itself and more sacred than Christmas. We look at the entire year's movies and games and tell you what the best ones were. This year's a little bit different though. This is going to be a first in Moisties history. Since this year was so fucked when it came to movies, we're only going to be doing top 3 best and worst movies. Now please Redditors, don't get out your pitchfork yet, it wasn't a decision we came to lightly. We didn't want to call this audible, we like doing the top 5 best and worst. It really has become a staple in American culture to watch the top 5 best and worst movies from the Moisties. But this year, I don't even think 10 movies came out in total. So with our backs pushed up against the lockers by the pandemic, we had no choice but to only have top 3. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it with number 3, Mulan. I think no one is surprised to see Mulan making this list here for the top 3 worst movies of 2020. The movie is not only insulting to fans of the original, but it's insulting to anyone that even likes movies. It's just not good. In anything that it tries to do or be, it strips itself of all of its original's charm and is left just an empty husk, this fucking sick puppet that Disney forced to dance on screen for money. And luckily it didn't work, the movie flopped, which is fantastic, there is still some justice in the world, but there's just nothing to like about Mulan. There's nothing emotional about it. The most emotional I got when watching Mulan was when I couldn't decide if I wanted to go take a shit during it or not because I'd missed some of it, and then I ultimately decided that it was probably going to be more interesting for me to take a shit than watch the movie. That was the most emotion I felt throughout the entire runtime of Mulan, just a bit of stress in making that decision. It's just not anything worth watching. It's not so bad it's good, it's just straight ass cheeks. There's really not a lot to like about the movie, and it really feels like it was thrown together super haphazardly in Movie Maker. Like, the cuts they make in this movie make no sense. Like, all of a sudden they'll be faced with this problem like, oh my god, there's an army coming, what are we gonna do? And then Mulan sees a rock 5 miles away, and then literally 1 second later she's behind that rock in a flanking position about to cause like some kind of apocalyptic avalanche out of nowhere. Things just happen out of nowhere. It's a bad movie. Like, it is just not well put together, and there's just nothing to like, except for maybe a couple scenes of action where it has like some wire shit going on, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which I've always liked, but it's not even done well enough in this movie to redeem it. It's just not good. Absolutely deserving of the number 3 spot on this list. Now moving on to the number 2 spot on the Moisties top 3 worst movies of 2020, Artemis Fowl. Back-to-back Disney entries. The 2020 year has not been kind to Disney. Artemis Fowl is without exaggeration the absolute worst Disney movie they have ever made. If fucking Walt Disney himself drew 5 pages of furry hentai in the 1940s, it would be better than the entire movie of Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl felt like an experiment from Disney to see if they could make a movie based entirely on Cleverbot answers. Like, they just fed a bunch of Artemis Fowl facts from the books to Cleverbot, and whatever Cleverbot's nonsense response was became part of the movie and the script for the characters to read from, because it is fucking nonsensical. For those that don't know, Cleverbot's like this fucking AI thing where you just ask stupid questions and it gives dumb fucking answers. And even Cleverbot's answers had to be better than this movie's script. Really, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that all of the actors that are in this movie never actually went to set or even knew they were in this movie. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they were like deep faked 3D models that they put in here, because it is robotic. It's like a bunch of androids trying to read lines. Watching this movie is like a psychosis simulator. You don't know what's real or not, and you're just left in this perpetual fucking confusion. It's a mess. The narrative is so bad, too. The most nonsensical plot of probably any movie I've ever seen. At least in other movies, there's a point A and a point B, and things happen to get to the end. In this movie, 1,000 things just happen for no reason. For example, the movie revolves around Artemis Fowl's dad getting kidnapped by a big evil villain, who, by the way, is only on screen for 3 or 4 scenes across the entire movie. And also, by the way, the teaser trailer for this movie doesn't actually exist in the movie. None of those scenes from the trailer even made it to the real movie. So I don't know what the fuck we were left with, just like the leftovers of whatever disaster happened when they were editing. So it's like completely misleading if you watch the trailers. That's not the actual movie. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked already. The Artemis Fowl's dad is kidnapped by a villain that you never really fucking see and who doesn't really do anything. There's no stakes. And the only way to save his dad is by finding the Acleus, which is this crazy treasure that's never explained. You don't know what it does or why they want it. And then there's an entire crew of fairies in another civilization that for some reason all decide that they need the Acleus too, and they send one fairy girl who goes to this giant tree that Artemis Fowl happened to be waiting there with a sniper. He tranquilizes her. They then lock the fairy in the basement in a cage, and she fucking hates them, spitting on them, you know, curse you, Artemis Fowl, you piece of shit. And then the next scene, she's their best friend. Artemis Fowl, reading some of his dad's books, decides that the Acleus has to be in the house, even though that's never explained. And if the Acleus never left the house, why did the fairies say that it was lost and needed to be found in the first place, since it never fucking left the house to begin with? But anyway, once the fairy gets kidnapped, the entire fairy civilization sends their entire army to Artemis Fowl's house. And then when the lead fairy goes to talk to Artemis Fowl, he says, "You can't come in." And to that, the lead fairy says, "Well, okay then, I guess we're fucked." So the fairies, being outsmarted by Artemis Fowl, who just says, "Please don't send your army in," decides that the only way they're going to save the fairy and get the Acleus is by having a dwarf come in. So they have Josh Gad come in, and he breaks his jaw and starts shoveling dirt with his mouth and shitting it out his ass. And he tunnels into Artemis Fowl's house and somehow finds a hidden safe behind a painting where the Acleus is. There's just nothing, there's no stakes here, and things just happen for no reason. It's like some terrible fucking fan fiction someone would have written about Artemis Fowl 30 years ago. It's baffling. And then after finding the Acleus, the day is saved because the fairy uses it to teleport Artemis Fowl's dad back from the main villain, and the movie ends and the fairy army just leaves. It's so fucking stupid. Like, that's not even half of it. That doesn't even cover the main bases. But that's like the main beats. It is so fucking dumb. Artemis Fowl absolutely takes the second position. And you're probably asking yourself, Charlie, how does it get worse than Artemis Fowl? There's no way there was a movie worse than Artemis Fowl this year, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Cuties. Number 1. Cuties. The worst movie not only of this year, but I think probably the worst movie I've ever seen come out. Regardless of whatever the director's intentions were, what she ended up creating was a movie that catered towards pedophiles. It is a movie that hypersexualizes children for the entire duration, and a movie I could only stomach 30 or 40 minutes of. It was truly repulsive and disgusting, and it honestly felt like I had committed a crime by even turning that on Netflix. I feel like I have to look outside of my window and check for like a flower van with a satellite dish on top of it, making sure there's not like the FBI in there waiting to bust me for just watching it. It was a movie that's so bad that it spawned a lawsuit against it because it was classified as legal pedophilia. It was legally classified as pedophilia. It's crazy that this movie even got made and that people still defend it. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if what you end up creating contributes to the problem that you're trying to address, then you fucked up and that's your fault. The movie does nothing to speak against the hypersexualization of children and really just seems to encourage it throughout its entire runtime. It is absolutely disgusting stuff. If you wanted to make a movie talking about the evils of sexualizing children, you could have done it by either not using actual 11-year-old actresses or just not had the camera start panning in on their vaginas and asses in every single fucking scene and having wet t-shirt contests, have them sending vagina pictures in the movie and all the other heinous shit you had them doing. There was plenty of ways to speak out against the sexualization of children without actually sexualizing kids along the way. Without a single doubt, it is the worst movie of the year. So that concludes this year's Moisties for the 2020 movie season. These were the top 3 worst movies of the year. That's it. See ya. Oh, this is absolutely going in the top 5 worst movies. I watched this movie with full intention of doing a moist meter on it because I always like watching the Conjuring series. The second I finished watching this movie, I forgot we ever watched it. This was one of the most forgettable horror movies I've ever seen. Every aspect of this movie was just fucking painful. By the time it was over, it was like the Men in Black came in and hit me with a neuralizer. Every detail of this movie was immediately lost to me. Black Widow might go on top 5 worst movies. I'll have to see what else came out. I'd say Space Jam is absolutely going on the top 5 worst. I don't know where yet, but this movie was insufferable. This movie was so bad. It was just watching one long commercial with a lot of other commercials inside of it. It was just a full-blown advertisement. It was effortless too, because if like all of the characters that they brought in were just like the laziest cosplayers of all time, like Jack Sparrow and shit. They just used Party City costuming. There's another Paranormal Activity movie? Why did all of the good dog shit go to Paramount Plus? It makes me want to actually get a subscription to that. I guess Paramount Plus is just like where you go to find movies to laugh at. I did see the Resident Evil movie. Not a good movie, but probably not one of the 5 worst either. I'm gonna take a piss real quick and then we'll do the worst movies of 2021. This is gonna be a competitive list. There were some super stinkers last year. I think number 5 has to be Matrix Resurrections. I don't think Matrix Resurrections is worse than like any of the other movies here, but it's bad. It's very bad. We had 2 fucking podcast episodes dedicated to just shitting on it. It's extremely disappointing as fans of The Matrix. There is nothing in this movie that makes it worth watching. In every department, it is a true step backwards from the original trilogy. Even though Reloaded's not amazing and Revolutions is even less amazing, this one still manages to be significantly worse than both. The entire first half of the movie is nothing but clips from the original trilogy. It is nothing but nostalgia bait in the first half of the movie while being as meta as possible. So they actually have the in-world characters saying things like, The Matrix is about bullet time. The Matrix is about ass beaten in a capitalist society. Literally just referencing The Matrix and showing clips from The Matrix. Like full movie clips. It's like watching a YouTube pirated upload of the Matrix movies. And it just constantly references itself in its own movie directly. It's really stupid. It's laughable. And it critiques itself. Like they even say in the movie, Warner Bros. Is demanding a new Matrix movie, which means we have to take it from the get-go, going over the top, getting big, getting wild, nuts to butts. New Matrix 20 years later, it's gotta be wild. It's gotta be wild, Thomas. And then every like joke it made about itself that was meta, like Matrix is only about bullet time, is literally what the movie becomes. It is just a soulless cash grab of a movie. And the agents suck dick. The agents are trash. Agents don't do anything. The main enemy becomes zombies. They introduce zombies in this movie, and that's mainly what they fight. And they barely fight. It's, oh my god, everything is wrong about this movie. And then out of nowhere, towards the end of the movie, they introduced Beast Wars, like Transformers. If anyone remembers Beast Wars, which is like robots that transform into animals. They introduce robotic animals at the end of the movie. Kujaku to save the day out of nowhere. A literal robot bird that miraculously wins them the day. This is absolutely number 5. I don't think it's worse than any of these, except Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat shouldn't even be here. I actually had fun watching it. This one seemed like self-aware in its goofiness. I wish I could get more specific, but I don't want to just spoil it outright. There's just so much wrong with the movie. And it completely retcons a lot of what was established in the original trilogy. It's just not good. I wouldn't say Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City would even be in the top 5, honestly. I think Matrix Resurrections was worse. This is again a movie that isn't good, but I did enjoy some of it. At least in this one, they kind of try and speedrun Resident Evil lore. So there's a lot of things you can point and be like, yeah, I remember that from the game. Damn, it looked better there. Though half of the movie is spent in pure pitch black darkness. They go to the mansion, and you can't see shit half the time. It's just like still images of zombie faces occasionally. I don't know. I wouldn't put it at number 4, 3, 2, or 1. I'll just take it off. These are all worse, I'd say. Except maybe the Eternals. The Eternals is again one of those movies that's just super forgettable. It doesn't do anything like horribly wrong. It just doesn't do anything in general. But I did not see the G.I. Joe movie. I know the G.I. Joe movie was hated by everyone though, but I didn't see it. Apparently they really fucked up Snake Eyes. I think I'd give number 4 to Halloween Kills. Oh, well, but then there's Fast 9. But Black Widow 2. This is tough, man. Fuck. I can't decide. Like, Halloween Kills is just gore all over the place. Everyone's just a giant meat balloon. Like, it's just kind of goofy. There's real fun to be had just watching Michael Myers be this immortal killing machine who only has to, like, look at someone for them to explode like it's Team Fortress 2. Like, there is fun in that. Is it an objectively worse movie than Fast 9 and Black Widow? Probably. In fact, absolutely. But it's a more fun movie to watch than these two. Evil Dies Tonight. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and apparently that whole town was just looking for any excuse to murder someone because all they had to do was just say, hey, we want to kill a guy. And they're like, all right, when and where? We'll be there. So they end up uniting the entire town to try and murder a guy. Fucking hospitals overrun with blood-hungry, like, random civilians. Fucking giving guns to kids to shoot people. Alright, I'm putting Halloween Kills at number 4. Yeah, I've been convinced. Halloween Kills it's going number 4. One of these is gonna end up at number 3. Halloween Kills is fucking fun. There's a scene in the movie, this isn't a spoiler, I think it's even in one of the trailers. Michael Myers comes to a car of people that are out on the hunt to kill him because the whole thing is Evil Dies Tonight. They've had enough of Michael Myers. He's escaped again, and the tomfoolery, they're tired of it. He killed a whole platoon of firefighters, like, God damn it, we're done with it. Now we're taking matters into our own hands. So he goes into this group of people, they get into this car, and they drive to, like, a playground looking for Michael. Michael ends up, like, showing up, and it's like the goofiest display of, like, Looney Tunes theatrics. Michael Myers, like, at the window, and he doesn't really have to do anything. The people just start killing themselves. So, like, Michael Myers will choke one of them, and then the dude's wife, like, ends up shooting him, like, the guy that's getting choked. He's like, I got you covered, honey, and the wife just, like, fucking pops him or something, if I remember right. And then eventually Michael Myers is like, oh, God, even I've had enough of this. So then Michael Myers gets out of the car, and the wife has the gun again trained on him, and then Michael Myers, like, gently pushes the door at her hand, and it hits her hand, and the gun turns to her, and she shoots herself in the head. And then one of the other girls gets like a sock of bricks, and like hits Michael with it, and then crawls past the playground. I need to rewatch that car scene, because I'm sure I'm getting it wrong. I remember the girl shooting herself, getting hit by the car door. I remember the guy getting choked, ending up getting like fucking team killed, and then the girl hitting Michael with some bricks. There's also a guy who throws himself out of a hospital window. He looks like Peter Pettigrew from Harry Potter, and he gets like implicated in the Evil Dies Tonight thing. Because for some reason they all want to kill Michael Myers but don't know what he looks like or like anything about him. So they end up just choosing random people like, that's gotta be Michael Myers, that 14-year-old boy. Then they all like start ganging up on him, getting ready to murder him. And that happens to one dude in a hospital. And he's like, oh, I've been cornered. This is where it ends. So he throws himself from a window, and when he hits the ground, his whole body just combusts like he landed on a landmine. His arms are like all over the sidewalk. His fucking toes are shot into trees. His face is like split in half. And it was only like a 3-story fall. Yeah, this is number 4. I'd actually recommend it, to be honest. The more I talk about it, the more I want to go back and rewatch it. I think I had more fun watching Fast 9. I think Fast 9 is a worse movie than Black Widow, but I think I enjoyed it more. I love the over-the-top nature of the Fast franchise, but Fast 9 did it the worst. I had moments where I was like, damn, I feel like I'm part of the family. This is kind of cool, I guess. It's also like a bunch of garbage writing-wise, which of course it's Fast, but like, even for Fast and Furious, it's on another level of garbage. Like, they end up going to Japan to look for a Mexican flag or something. I forgot what it was. Like, they went to Japan looking for a guy, and the clue was look for the Mexican flag. And the two girls just happen to be, like, sitting at this like, outside diner, and they're just, like, talking about important things like, damn, you remember when we were family? We lost our family. Like, shit, family's really going down the fucking drain. And then I think it was Who was it? I think it was Letty. She's like, you see that Mexican flag? You think that could be part of the clue? I think that's what we're here for. Just happened to be like right outside, and then they go in there, and then they find Han again, who's been revived for the 4th time. This dude gets revived more often than fucking Darth Sidious. But I at least enjoyed parts of it. There's almost nothing I enjoyed about Black Widow. It was just a really hard to sit through movie. Because you already know where it ultimately ends up. Like, it's a character that they've already taken out of the MCU. So the character had nowhere to go. There was no reason to flesh out Black Widow's character. It was already over. And I understand, like, it introduces Yelena, but I also didn't care about her character that much. She was kind of cool, but there was nothing unique about her. She didn't really have anything that really stood out. And it just because it introduces a new character who will probably be important doesn't mean the movie is better because of it. And I really hated the villain. The stinky villain. You smell him and you can't hurt him because his smell is so strong. There's just nothing in the movie I thought worked. And I thought they did Taskmaster super dirty. Taskmaster ended up being extremely lame, even though he's a really cool character in the comics. Yeah, I just don't think it did well. I just don't, yeah. I've convinced myself this is the right call. Black Widow #3, worst movie of 2021. As a movie, like, it's competent. There's a story. The story makes sense. The characters aren't horribly written. But it's a really nothing burger of a movie. Like you watch it, but you don't get anything out of it. So now we come down to the final 2. Yeah, Black Widow's just painfully generic. Super safe. I think this is going to be controversial. Space Jam New Legacy #2. Like I said, this is basically just watching one long advertisement with multiple ads placed within it. It's basically like logging on to YouTube without an ad blocker. It's rough. It's fucking rough. You're literally getting nothing out of it. It is an insult to the Space Jam legacy. I get it. It's very bad. Very, very bad. There is nothing to like about this movie. Even if you love LeBron like you'd suck a fart out of his butt, you won't like this movie. He's not good in it. And he doesn't really even play basketball. It's a mobile game that he plays in the form of basketball. His son, like, designs, like, cheat codes in basketball. It's stupid. It's bad. Everything about it's bad. All very lazy. They didn't even, like, have a costume department. They just had, like, the intern go to Party City for their costumes. So the cosplay and, like, all the references to other content was bad. Definitely in the top 5 worst, but I'm actually going to say The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is worse. And I stand by it. This movie is perhaps the most awful, forgettable horror movie. Usually with a bad movie, I have a lot to say about it and a lot to, like, you know, poke fun at and have some, like, goofs and gaffs about. This movie, I had nothing. I sat there after these credits rolled and I truly had nothing on my mind. It was like an out-of-body experience. I genuinely felt like I was meditating. Like I had achieved nirvana. This movie pushed my soul out of the shell. It was so mind-numbing, uninteresting, and full of nothing. I can't actually describe it. I finished watching it and forgot I ever saw it. It was like 2 hours just vanished from my life with no explanation. It's like the closest thing I could imagine to amnesia. I think this movie offers nothing. The devil made you forget about it. Yeah, pretty much though. I see, with Space Jam, you can joke about it. You can point things out and be like, haha, this is goofy because it's shitty. Or, wow, look how stupid Jack Sparrow looks here. They didn't even try. Wow, this is bad. With this movie, you will sit there in silence with nothing to say. Like, you could have all the brewskis in the world with your friends. You could be like, hey, I'm ready to buckle down. We're going to have a bad movie night with the bros. It's going to be great. And you throw this on, nobody's having any fun. It's actual brainwashing. But not like to convince you of something. It just literally washes your brain like clean slate. You forget everything. It's just bad. Like, it's just really that bad. I personally would choose Space Jam just because I can at least still joke about it with somebody, or, you know, point at things and be like, hey, haha, ho ho. This is nothing. I stand by it. Worst movie of 2021. All right. Not at all the worst. I think it is. I think Space Jam is probably an objectively worse movie, but this is an objectively worse experience. Because it's like the absence of an experience.
Initiating moisture.
Yeah, it's everyone's favorite time of the year again. It's the Moisties, powered by Godslap, where we count down the top 5 best and worst games and movies that came out this year. It's an annual tradition that's more well-loved than the Super Bowl. So we're going to start with the top 5 worst movies that came out this year because I think this year was extremely competitive for super stinkers, and I'm really excited to show you the top 5. I really can't overstate just how stressful it was narrowing this down to just the 5 worst movies when there were so many top-tier piles of dog shit all competing for a slot on this list. It really felt like studios went out of their way in 2022 to make the worst movie imaginable. But overall, I'm very happy with the list that we've settled on, so let's get into it. At number 5, we have Jurassic World Dominion. What a filthy stain on the Jurassic Park legacy. Not like everything in the Jurassic Park franchise has been a hit by any means, but they have had some good films. Their hits hit, but their shits shit. And they shit hard. None harder than Jurassic World Dominion, though. I think this is the lowest point for the entire franchise, and I quite honestly couldn't think of a worse plot to send this out on. It is horrible top to bottom. The only good thing about Jurassic World Dominion is its visuals and its action scenes. And not even all of its action scenes, just certain sequences I think they did a great job on, but aside from that, there's nothing to like here. But by far the most offensive part of Jurassic World Dominion is how boring it is. It is almost impossible to stay awake through this entire film. That in and of itself is like the cinnamon challenge of this generation. It is such a brutally difficult film to keep your eyes open during. It's just not interesting at all. I dozed off like 2 or 3 times during this film. I just couldn't help it. I couldn't stay awake. It felt like I was in the middle of some kind of Batman villain plot where Scarecrow was pumping sleeping gas into the auditorium or something. I won't spend too much time breaking down all the things that make Jurassic World Dominion awful, but I do want to make a special mention here of just how terrible its conclusion is. It's going to be a light spoiler, but the film sets up very early on that dinosaurs and humans can't really coexist, like we're not sharing the world right. Dinosaurs are fucking our shit up, they're not really getting integrated with us in a great way, so it's just not working out. By the end of the film, after a big climactic showdown with the Giganotosaurus, which, by the way, was hyped up to be like the Joker, the director said this dinosaur is like the Joker in the way that it just wants to watch the world burn, which makes no fucking sense. So, like, I was expecting it to talk about society or something, but it's just like, well, it's mean. That's how it's like the Joker, I guess. But anyway, they have this big climactic showdown with that super dinosaur, and then after that fight is over with, now all of a sudden all the dinosaurs work really well with humans. They run with elephants, they're hanging out, like everything's great. But why? Nothing changed. There was a fight at Biosyn, and now for some reason the entire world and all of its dinosaurs work together beautifully now, even though nothing has changed on a global scale. It's so stupid. It's so fucking stupid. But anyway, before steam starts coming out of my ears, moving on to number 4, a movie I know you've all seen because it's become the highest grossing film of all time by a wide margin. It's Morbius. Morbius was the biggest movie that's ever been made, a blockbuster by all accounts, and even coined the phrase, "It's Morbin time." It was a cultural phenomenon. And who could forget the iconic scene where Jared Leto, standing in the rain atop a building, stares the camera directly down the barrel and gives his now infamous line, "I morb, therefore I am." Goosebumps every time. Now, dropping the facade and all the memes, of course, this film was a massive flop. It's a superhero film no one really wanted, and it was terrible, like absolutely horrible. When there was an action scene, they basically just turned the lights off. You couldn't see anything. It's just like this pile of particles and dust and darkness. It was absolutely horrible by all definitions, which is why it became such a meme. Nobody saw it. So they started spreading rumors about it, such as like a scene that they fabricated where he says, "It's Morbin time." And then the film eventually leaves theaters, but it still maintains its meme status. There's 24-hour streams of Morbius running on Twitch, and the studio actually gets gaslit into thinking that if they re-released it, it might actually generate a net revenue. Like, they might actually get money out of this because they didn't the first time. but it seems like a lot of people want it. So they re-released Morbius and it flopped again, triumphantly. Nobody saw the re-release. It made like 90 grand or something, if that. Like they sold like 50 fucking tickets. So they flopped it twice. It was incredible. Nothing like this I have ever seen before. It was something truly special. It's a horrible film in and of its own right, but what made it so incredible was what happened after it flopped. The memes around it and everything that surrounded this mythos of Morbius. It was so good. But yes, absolutely this film is horrible. It is just bad by all possible definitions that you could ever measure a film in. There is no part of this film that succeeds in even the slightest. I don't think there's any reason for me to go through and break it down further. You can watch like the actual full moist meter I did on it if you want more details, but there is really nothing in this film that actually works, and that's why it became such a fucking meme. But yeah, moving on to number 3, Fantastic Beasts: Secrets of Dumbledore, a movie that was so insultingly terrible that I came home and immediately started a stream called I Just Saw a Horrible Film, and then I ranted about it for over an hour and a half. This film is the most awfully constructed piece of fiction I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. I've seen every Harry Potter film, all the Fantastic Beasts movies. The last one was pretty ass, but this one is turbo ass. This is plus ultra ass. I could rant about how horrible this is for so long. But since this is a top 5 list here, I'm going to keep it brief. Secrets of Dumbledore is a movie where you spend an hour and 40 minutes with characters that do nothing. So they set up the problem early. There's a creature that bows and chooses the leader of the magical world. A stupid process, by the way, to just have a random animal who allegedly can look into your heart and tell you if you're a good boy or girl, like Santa Claus, and if he bows to you, you're now the leader of the magic world. No questions asked. Pretty fucking stupid plot point, but the problem is that creature has been kidnapped by the bad guy, Grindelwald, and he's come up with an evil plan. But Dumbledore and the rest of the good guys learn that he can kind of see into the future. So I shit you not, Dumbledore says, how do you combat against a guy who can see into the future? And Dumbledore's plan is, we don't have a plan. We have to go at this with no plan. And by golly, is he right? They had no plan and they do nothing. The characters do nothing. Everything that they do, all the tiny little side quests they embark on, contribute nothing to the overall plot of stopping Grindelwald from becoming the leader since he has now kidnapped that magical creature. It is so infuriatingly awful. It's one of the very few times I genuinely considered getting up and leaving the theater. I couldn't believe how much my time was being wasted blatantly right in front of me. And the ending of the film is so stupid. I won't spoil it. I will spoil it. I've changed my mind. Spoiler warning. The fucking I won't spoil it. I've changed my mind again. I'm not going to get into it because I already know that's going to lead to like a 15-minute rant. It is awful. Truly, truly terrible. Also, the Secret of Dumbledore is a person who only has 4 scenes. Like, maybe 4 scenes, if that, in the film. The Secret of Dumbledore is a fucking worthless plot point, too. That, again, doesn't even contribute to the overall problem. It's so bad. It is such a bad movie. God damn it, now I'm already lost in the sauce. One more thing before we move on to number 2. I do want to give you a quick example. Jacob, who is a big part of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, you know, he's a muggle, but he works with the magic people and everything like that, all the wizards, like, he has a place in the films, and he has played a decently sized role there. In this film, Dumbledore hypes him up as like, we need you, Jacob. In fact, you're the most important part of this entire operation. You know what Jacob does in this fucking movie? Nothing! Absolutely nothing! 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 At all! No one does! It's so stupid! Fuck me, it's dumb. And then they have this thing where they have a spy go in there who... I'm getting too lost. Secrets of Dumbledore, I couldn't decide if it should be the second worst film of the year or the third. But ultimately I decided on the third because the second one, I think, is like a objectively worse film. But nothing has made me as upset as Secrets of Dumbledore with how just awful every single thing that happens narratively in this film is. Now moving on to the number 2 spot, I'm giving it to Halloween Ends. Halloween franchise is actually making a killing in the Moisties because you might remember last year, Halloween Kills actually made our top 5 worst list then. But this time it's even deeper in our list because Halloween Ends is worse. Somehow. My God. I, I don't know how you could make it worse, but they found a way. This movie barely has Michael Myers in it. In fact, it focuses on a new foe who's like a pseudo Michael Myers, a diet Michael Myers, who's coming into his own. So he was a misunderstood kid that had a very unfortunate thing happen to him early in his life, and then, the whole town hates him, but he wasn't a bad guy until he decides to become a bad guy after encountering Michael Myers in a sewer, and he's weak as fuck. Michael Myers just gets, like, potato sacked, like he pushes him over and he falls and he hurts himself, but it ends up making this new kid bad, evil. So then he's, like, trying to get laid by one of the characters from the previous films. I'm trying hard not to spoil things, I really am, but it's just not good. And the first hour or so doesn't even have any kind of, like, action or gore to it, except for the opening scene. The opening scene goes so hard and it's extremely goofy in all the right ways. So the guy was a babysitter. I don't think this is a spoiler since the first scene, and I actually think it's in one of the trailers. The guy was a babysitter, and the kid played a prank on him where he locked him in a door upstairs on the 3rd floor, and the kid starts freaking out, like, hey, let me out, this is really scary, what if Michael Myers is in here? And the kid, the babysitter, kicks down the door, and the door flies off the hinges, hitting the kid, sending him flying like a goddamn cannonball shot out of a cannon off of the 3rd floor and hitting the ground, where he just explodes on impact in front of his mom and dad. So then the babysitter stands trial but was ultimately found not guilty, that it was accidental, and he wasn't a bad guy until, all the stupid shit that happens here happens. And then nothing of any substance or interest happens. Like, I don't care about his relationship with the girl. It's super uninteresting. It's super weird because the girl just wants to fuck him the second that she knows he's, like, messed up. Like, it's just, there's nothing actually interesting or, I don't know, enticing about the plot. Like, when you're watching a Halloween film, you're watching it because you want to see Michael Myers fuck shit up. You want to see people fighting and, knives and gunshots. It's anything interesting, and you don't get that with Halloween Ends until, like, the very end of the movie, and even then it's not that creative. They have a couple of interesting moments that they do decently well, and the final fight between Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers is well done. I did actually appreciate that. But, I mean, fuck, it doesn't justify the other, like, hour and whatever we just spent of going on this meaningless, uninteresting journey with a character that it's actually hard to care about. So, just a really, like, wet fart conclusion to the new Halloween trilogy that I really think they dropped the ball on. Now, as a special little treat here, we're going to do some dishonorable mentions. I actually wanted second place on this list to be a 3-way tie, because they're all 3 absolutely terrible horror movies, but Jackson said it'd be better just to choose the worst one and then do the other 2 as dishonorable mentions, so we're playing by his rules. The first dishonorable mention that I'd like to put here is the new Chainsaw Massacre movie, the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. The reason this one's on here is because it's absolutely horrible. I'm sure you've seen the now infamous scene from the movie where Leatherface is on the party bus and everyone's filming him for the Instagram lives and like, bro, you're gonna, like, cramp our style on this party bus. Why do you have a chainsaw, bro? And then he just starts chopping people up and they're like, oh my god, my arm, and he's chopping me with a chainsaw. It's a terrible, horrible scene that's indicative of the quality for the entire film. But I will make the argument that it is almost self-aware in its silliness for at least some scenes. There are some extremely over-the-top, goofy gore moments where, like, Leatherface will push someone and they fall and, like, all of a sudden 5 limbs shoot off of their body, like, out of nowhere, like a Mr. Potato Head, when all they did was, like, fall down. And then he'll, like, stomp on their head and, like, 15 brains all shoot out of their eyeballs. Like, there are really enjoyable moments for that film, even though overall it's bad. Like, by all possible means and definitions, it's just bad. Now, for this film, though, I will spoil the ending here because it is baffling. So, they think they've defeated Leatherface. They think they've finally killed him because every horror movie has that trope, that little bait and switch. So, in the end, the main girl and her sister are in a self-driving vehicle and they're talking like, man, what a relief. He's finally dead. We can go home. And as the self-driving vehicle's about to take off, Leatherface comes out of nowhere and grabs the main girl's sister, and then he takes her by the hair and he cuts her head off with the chainsaw as the main girl looks on out of the sunroof from the self-driving car and screams, "No!" as the car drives itself home. And then Leatherface is, pumping the chainsaw up and the credits roll. It's so silly. Now, safely securing another dishonorable mention is The Grim Cuddy. This was a horror movie I was very excited to see. It's a Hulu original, and it looked absolutely atrocious just from the trailers. So I was excited. I thought it was going to be fun bad, but I did not get a fun bad experience in the slightest. It's actually just kind of insufferably bad. It really preaches about like cell phones being evil, like we don't like cell phones, boo, cell phones, not good. Like the parents are taking away cell phones because there's the Grim Cuddy going around, the Grim Cuddy challenge or whatever. And it's all based on like that Momo stuff from a few years back where like Momo tells you to punch yourself in the face. And parents are like, holy fuck, Momo's making my kids punch themselves in the face. So they made a whole movie about it called The Grim Cuddy where the Grim Cuddy tells you to hurt yourself. Parents freak out. It makes the Grim Cuddy hysteria spread all over the place. And it's just dumb. Holy shit, it's just dumb. This one I don't know if I want to spoil anything from because this one's just like a really short movie that if you like bad horror movies, you might find something enjoyable about the awfulness of it. So I won't spoil too much of it, but just watch a trailer and I think you'll already get a really accurate impression for how the whole film plays out and how the whole film is. There's nothing to really like about it other than the cheesiness of it. So yeah, Grim Cuddy safely at that number 2 awful worst movie of the year spot. And now number 1, the worst movie of the year. And I would actually make an argument, perhaps one of the worst movies ever made, but in all the right ways. Moonfall. A movie that really just took control of my soul. I saw it, came home, and then made like a 30-minute, unfiltered, unstopped, uncapped, unhinged rant about Moonfall. Moonfall is a disaster film about the moon, you know, mysteriously falling out of orbit and crashing towards the Earth, which would be the end of all life on the planet. And while it sounds like a simple premise, the amount of shit that happens in that film with the amount of crazy, absolutely unpredictable plot twists and developments would have your head spinning. I told my friends about this, Aaron and Chase, and they saw it. Aaron, Chase, and Meadow all went and saw it like a week after I did. They were talking about it for 3 hours. They couldn't stop themselves. And now I know Aaron in particular has seen this film like 4 times. Every time you watch this film, you find something different to appreciate. It is an absolute masterpiece of trash. I can't even put into words just how impressive it is in getting everything wrong, but in the most entertaining way. There's no level of self-awareness to this film. None of this was planned with how bad it is. In fact, it had the audacity to try and set up an extended universe for Moonfall. And I pray every couple of days that we get a Moonfall sequel, because that's what we deserve. We need it. This film does everything wrong, but in a way that will have you smiling the whole time. And it's a big chunk of meat, too. This is an over 2-hour film, but it feels like it's 20 minutes. Because it's constantly having your neurons fire to process the craziness that you're witnessing. Moonfall is the best bad movie ever made. And I don't say that lightly. I've seen every Neil Breen film. I've of course seen The Room. I've seen every notably awful pile of trash that's ever been made, and nothing even comes close to Moonfall. I cannot stop preaching about the beauty of this film. I do it on stream all the time. It is my go-to answer for what's the worst movie I've ever seen, Moonfall, and I always make sure to say, but in the best way. It is the perfect bad film, and I have never had so much fun watching a movie. I love Moonfall, but it is absolutely the worst film of 2022 and potentially the worst film of all time. So yeah, that concludes the top 5 worst movies of 2022. Please make sure to check out Godslap. It's our comic series. Go to godslapbook.com to pick yourself up a copy, or you can download it digitally.
Hey guys, Jackson here. You've now seen the absolute worst creativity has brought humanity. Now it's time to check out the best. Godslap. This is a comic book series created by Charlie, myself, Matt, and Danny. We're super excited to announce issue 2 is out there in the world right now. This one's written by myself and world-renowned comic book author Aubrey Citizen. This world, the story, the series means so much to myself and Charlie. There's just been like an overwhelming amount of passion and multiple years now put into it. And we just can't wait to see more and more of you reading what we've created here. You can snag some awesome limited edition variant covers right now as well over at godslapbook.com that will never ever be restocked ever again. You'll be owning a piece of Godslap history with them. We've also got our first merch drop, beanies, t-shirts, jackets, and a novelty glove, which all just look fucking awesome. Really fun stuff there. You can go check them out at godslapbook.com as well. Right now, the best way to get into Godslap is the bundles, running through until December 25th. You can save a bit of money and get the Elite Edition, which includes all 4 covers of Godslap Issue 2, a copy of Issue 1 as well, and an Issue 2 poster, and the Godslap tee as well, all for $99. You even get Issue 1 and 2 digital copies thrown in there as well. It's the best bang for your buck option if you want to own every single cover from Issue 2. There's other bundles available on godslapbook.com as well, so go check them out and see what you can find. Just on a personal note, I just want to thank you for supporting Godslap. If you've already picked up a copy, it means so much to the team and myself and Charlie to have you on this adventure with us, and we can't wait to show you what we have in store in 2023 for Godslap. Check out the video linked in the description for a full recap of Issue 1 narrated by Charlie, and also a brand new animation created by Sakasi Studios for Issue 2 showing off the series antagonist Defister. Seriously, thanks again, and we sincerely hope you love Godslap as much as we do. Thanks.
Look at me. I look like a revolting, greasy mess. I look like a scientist that had an experiment go wrong that blew up in his face, and I haven't bothered to clean myself off yet. But I don't look as bad as the 5 movies we're going to talk about today. The 5 biggest pieces of garbage that have contaminated the big screen throughout 2023. This is, again, not exactly a moisties because I didn't moist meter most of these films. I was actually so upset and offended by watching them that I came home and ranted about them in videos, which I think speaks volumes to the quality of dog shit that was produced. So, let's go ahead and take a little swim in the septic tank here. At number 5, we have a smorgasbord of superhero films. We had so many atrocious superhero movies this year, I didn't know how to properly divide them amongst the top 5. So instead, I've united the Justice League and the Avengers. I've shaken hands with Marvel and DC and said, why not both? So they're sharing the number 5 spot for worst movies of the year. It's Aquaman 2, Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and the Marvels. I actually moist metered all of these, but I'm going to briefly dissect why each one of them is here. Let's start with the most forgettable of the bunch, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. The only fury here is the fury of the audience that's going to have to suffer through their time being wasted having watched this. I swear, if a burglar broke in right now and put a gun to my head and told me to tell them a single scene in this film, I would fail and I'd end up with lead going right through my cranium. There is not a single moment of this film that I remember 9 months later. Nothing. At all. It's just this, like, blank period of time that I can't remember what I watched, but I know I hated it. Now, I can go back and watch the moist meter and get to relive some of that agony, but the point is, there's nothing about the film that stuck. Just genuinely a waste of time. And speaking of waste of time, let's go into Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This film just super sucks. The only thing that shrunk smaller than Ant-Man was my patience when watching this movie. It does pretty much everything wrong, and it introduces the most embarrassing villain superhero movies I've ever seen. And I don't even mean like modern superhero movies, I mean throughout the entire history of superhero movies existing, this is the worst sidekick villain they've ever introduced. MODOK. He looks horrible in this film, he is written horribly in this film, I don't even know why he's there. That was such a stupid decision, just like a legitimate blemish on cinema, like in general. It's so awful, MODOK's portrayal in this movie. If I was a MODOK fan, I would still probably be having steam come out of my ears after this. But even aside from that, everything else in the movie is also bad. The story sucks, the writing sucks, the characters suck, and it also is supposed to be the major introduction of the next big bad villain, who's already been introduced, but this was Kang's time to show why he's this major threat. And the movie makes him look like a bitch. Like he loses in hand-to-hand combat to Ant-Man? You're telling me the guy who can destroy billions of, like, galaxies and shit or whatever loses to Ant-Man in a fist fight? Like, come on. It's so ridiculous. So it was completely underwhelming for introducing why the big bad villain's gonna be a threat. The movie's just really bad overall, though. There's so many problems with it. And speaking of problems, let's just go ahead and move on to the next Marvel movie on the list is The Marvels. As I said in my moist meter, this is the messiest movie Marvel has ever made. Period. There is no movie that they have ever produced that is this disjointed, misguided, and all over the place. I really felt like we were watching a first draft that was going through revisions in real time, and then they ended up just accidentally shipping that version. The movie just doesn't know what it wants to be. Its tone is all over the place. Sometimes it tries to do the classic Marvel comedy formula, which it fails on for the most part. It tries to be dramatic, which it really fails on because they don't give any level of depth to the villain. It's still the worst villain in MCU history. I don't know why I'm saying still, it's only been a month. I can't remember the villain's name. I'm sure no one in the world does, not even the people who wrote the script for this film. But I don't think Marvel will ever make a villain this bad ever again and this bland. They'd have to actually try to intentionally sabotage their movie with a worse villain. They also commit this unforgivable sin of just making Nick Fury a clown. Like, in this film, all he is comic relief, even during the most intense of moments, like potentially world-ending consequences. All he does is crack jokes. He doesn't have a single line of serious dialogue in this entire movie. Not one, I don't think. And the whole film, like I said, keeps trying to, like, do this balancing act of, like, drama and comedy and action and all this, and it fails on all fronts. And it has, like, this entire plot line, this side quest line that actually takes up a lot of screen time about these cats that can eat people with these giant tentacles, and it becomes a core plot point. Like, it's just so silly, but not in like a self-aware fun way. It just becomes nauseating and makes you roll your eyes. Like, there's a whole planet where all they can do is talk in song, so they sing at each other, and that's super annoying. The movie's just really bad. It is so disjointed, the narrative is nonsensical, and it's like they just forgot how to make a movie, a superhero movie. As I said in the review, the only good thing about the Marvels is Supergirl. She is the only one. Kamala is the only character here that actually was pretty enjoyable. But anyway, and now finally, rounding off the number 5 spot for worst films of the year is Aquaman 2. I just saw this less than 2 weeks ago, and I've already forgotten pretty much everything about it. It is the most boring movie of the year. I was heavily contemplating making this at least number 2 on the worst films of the year list, but I thought it'd make sense if I just kept it all here in the superhero category for number 5. It is remarkably boring. The movie that is in theaters right now, I don't think is the movie they intended to make. I don't think this is the film they set out to produce. What they have here is this Frankenstein monster of boredom. It is held together by toothpicks and wet dreams, and it's horrible. It is so boring. What a terrible way of closing off the original DCU. It's a meaningless throwaway film that clearly nobody like cared about in the end to like poop it out in the state that it's in. It's bad. It's just bad. It's not even worth seeing at all. Alright, now finally moving on to number 4, we have Disney's Wish, a movie that had really awful reviews, which was really surprising to me because no matter what, Disney usually has successful hits, especially when it comes to animated movies. No matter what, people will appreciate them and sing their praises, but not for Wish, which really surprised me. I initially had no interest in seeing it just because it didn't look good to me. It didn't look like it'd be a movie I'd enjoy. But after seeing how shit on it was, like more so than a gas station toilet, I had to at least see, is it as bad as everyone was saying? And the answer is yes. It is the most painfully generic movie Disney has ever produced. It's like it was trying to parody Disney animated films. It borrowed so much from everything and put it into the most throwaway garbage imaginable. It really felt like they were obligated to make a movie, and this is what they turned in. It's like homework they felt forced to do. There's no real passion behind Disney's Wish. All of the songs are extremely phoned in. There's no real effort here at all. It just makes me question why even make it in the first place. And now at number 3 we have The Nun 2. I originally couldn't decide if this should go to The Nun 2 or Insidious the Red Door, but ultimately I decided to bestow this honorable position to The Nun 2 instead because it copy and pastes so many scenes from other horror films that I have to wonder if this is a plagiarism risk. Like, yeah, it changes the skin a little bit by giving it The Nun, but overall, it's still the exact same scenes from other films, like done one-to-one almost. It's not even really paying homage as much as it is just like sketching it, like literally tracing blueprints from other films and putting it in The Nun 2 because they didn't really want to try with this movie at all. I think AI played a huge role in making The Nun 2, I really do, to a certain level, and it really feels like it just started borrowing from other horror films because it didn't really want to try anything of its own. There's really nothing good I can say about The Nun 2. There shouldn't have even been a sequel to The Nun because the first one blew ass. But this one, it more than blows ass. This one's like sucking out the whole colon. Pretty much every single horror movie cliche you can think of, you will find in The Nun 2. Unapologetically just put right in your face shamelessly. It's just bad. Like really, really bad. So, moving on to number 2, we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. No one's surprised to see this on the list. I think you're probably surprised that it's not number 1. And I think a lot of you are probably surprised to learn that this film came out this year. But it did. It just barely makes the mark. I've talked about this a few times now because it's become kind of my go-to when talking about, like, really lazy horror for the sake of a quick, like, paycheck. Basically, what they did is they made the easiest, quickest horror movie they could off Winnie the Pooh when he went public domain because they knew it would get some shock ticket sales. So the movie doesn't really do anything. It's not even entertainingly bad. It's just really fucking cringe. So the scene that I mentioned a couple times, even outside of my initial rant on it, is one of the first scenes where Winnie the Pooh is chasing this girl around. He gets her next to a wood chipper and then like rips her top off and her titties start jiggling around like it's an NVIDIA, you know, physics showcase or something for a video game. And then Winnie the Pooh's like this and then throws her in the wood chipper. Like that's this kind of movie. Like it just takes the quickest idea you could think of for like a shocking Winnie the Pooh horror movie and puts it in here lazily. There's nothing of value here. I don't even think there's anything here that's fun bad. It's just truly wasteful of your time and intelligence. Like it actually just feels insulting to know that you bought a ticket or rented, you know, Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey on Amazon Prime or something. It just sucks. It really does. But no movie sucks more shit than our number 1 spot, Exorcist Believer. Now, it's actually on here for 2 reasons. The reason why it takes home the first place trophy here, the gold medal for worst film of the year, is more than it just being stinky. Obviously, it smells. This movie is not good. But, even more so than that, this is an extraordinarily expensive pile of trash. They paid like 400 million doubloons for the rights to The Exorcist to make this tragic pile of garbage. This has to be the worst investment I've ever seen in cinema. Like, this is one of the most expensive doo-doos ever put on the big screen here. And I believe they were trying to make this a new Exorcist trilogy. This was supposed to be one of a few more entries down the line. But this one was so bad off rip, I imagine they're just going to cancel it. Because where do you even go from here? They knew they needed this film to be good. And it wasn't. You can't even make a single argument for a fucking 10-minute stretch of this movie that's good. There is really nothing here at all. They produced an extremely generic, almost satirical take on The Exorcist, really. It's like they had just read a plot synopsis of The Exorcist 1, 2, and 3, and they're like, okay, we'll try something similar. And put one little quirky spin on it by having 2 girls be possessed. Ooh. Which I actually think could have been a cool idea if they had executed it better. But it really feels like they blew their load with budget getting the IP. They spent so much getting the IP that they didn't have any money left over to get writers. So then they just had to scramble and just fuck it, do it live. They had the actors on set and they just said improvise and we'll make the most out of it. It's just bad. It's just really bad. But more so than it just being bad is just how expensive it was to produce it and get the rights for it. It's just wild. So that's why it's the number 1 worst film of the year. That's really about it. So yeah. Are you going to do a top 5 movies of the year? Probably. I do it every year. I'll do top 5 best and worst games and movies. It's been a very competitive year for top 5 worst movies. Oh god, it's been cutthroat. Is Craven in top 5 for worst? No! That's how bad some of the movies have been this year. Craven is not in my top 5. Actually, you know what? I can do the top 5 worst movies of the year now. I don't think there's any other super stinkers coming out between now and the end of the year, right? I think it's safe to go through the top 5 worst. Okay. Here, we'll just pull up a list of all the movies and we'll go through it and check for worst movies of the year. Oh man, I forgot Night Swim was this year. That was the very beginning of the year and we got one of the worst horror movies the year had. But it's actually, again, you know what's crazy? Night Swim is not in my top 5 worst movies of the year. That is how competitive this year's been for trash. It's been Like, 2024 is a year for the history books in terms of how shit movies can be. It's been unbelievable. But here, I'll make a special note for Night Swim up here. Madam Web. Oh my god. It's hard to believe that that was less than, or only a month after Night Swim. We had such a fiery start for dog shit. Madam Web would definitely be in my top 5. It's just a matter of where. This movie, actually probably one of the worst superhero movies ever made. Nothing happens in it. It's also one of the very few movies I fell asleep during. So at the end of the movie where I was reaching its big, like, climactic final battle, I already forgot who the villain was. I fell asleep for a little bit. It's just very bad. Everything about it. I don't think I could possibly fish for a compliment even if my family was held at gunpoint. But it's not the worst movie of the year. I still firmly believe it's Borderlands, but we'll get into it. We'll keep going through the list. Imaginary. Another horrible horror movie. I don't think there was a good... No, there was a few good horror movies. I was about to get a little off my gourd there with that claim. The horror movies this year were something very special in terms of being shitty. Most of them weren't even fun bad. They were just almost unwatchably bad. Imaginary is not in my top 5 worst movies of the year, but it's horrible. Just a genuine waste of time. Going to a movie like Imaginary is just like going to sleep, but worse. Because at least when you wake up from sleep, you feel better. With Imaginary, you just kind of go into stasis and feel like shit at the end, and you're out like $15. Oh, Rebel Moon Part 2. Oh, that's going to be tough. I hate it more than I hate Night Swim and Imaginary. This movie actually made me go and do homework. Where I went through and calculated, I actually still have the notes here from it because I spent so much time doing this. I went through and I calculated exactly how long these movies spend in slow-mo. So I made a whole video going over how much slow-mo's in there, timestamping each slow-mo instance, and it's, what was it, 21% of these movies are spent in slow motion? It's so bad. It doesn't even have the decency to tell a compelling story. Like, there's a couple of good action moments and a few decent ideas and a couple of cool cinematic shots, but it's all wrapped together in just a fucking hemorrhoid. But don't let Snyder fans hear you say that. They like to live in the delusion that this is the next big Star Wars. That might be in my top 5. That's gonna be tough. That might be in my top 5. It definitely kicks out Night Swim from being viable for top 5 because I hate this more. Oh, Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate. I mean, yeah, it's just like a throwaway cash grab piece of shit. But I'm sure kids will just sit there and let it brainwash them if their parents don't feel like watching them. I can't even be that mad about that one. I think Tarot might be the worst horror movie of the year. I don't think any horror movie beat Tarot for being trash. Like, this is just irredeemable garbage. Every piece of this film just doesn't work. It's as generic as it gets, but it actually has stupider characters in this horror movie than any that I can think of off the top of my head. I think this is probably the worst horror movie of the year. This has to be top 5 for that. I feel like Night Swim was worse than Tarot. I don't know, though. Like, Night Swim, even from a conceptual standpoint, is worse than Tarot. It's about a haunted pool. The pool is built on cursed water. It's bad. And the dad goes in there and it heals him, but it also, like, steals his soul, and there's, like, a fat guy who splashes around. Like, it's dumb. It's super dumb. But that's, like, silly, fun, stupid, kind of. Tarot is not. It's just a headache. A nauseating chore to sit through. Your description makes me want to see it. No, trust me, the concept is a lot better than just the film. Like, the concept in and of itself is inherently silly, but the film is way too serious for it. It just sucks. It's miserable to watch. This is the one that had the trailer where it was like, Marco, where the girl's in the pool saying Marco, and then you hear, Bolo, and then, like, a splash. It's one of those bad YouTuber horror shorts, but as a movie. More or less. Oh, man, The Strangers Chapter 1. It really is impressive just how bad this year was for horror movies. Everything about this was just a downgrade. It's definitely not in my top 5 worst films of the year, though, but it is very bad. You thought this would be good, too. I mean, I like The Strangers. Was I wrong for having a little faith in the property? What is the charge? Enjoying a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? Like, I mean, I thought it was going to be good. How can you ruin The Strangers? But they found a way. The Watchers was also really bad. This was M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's directorial debut. Really kicked it off with a wet fart. There are people that really liked this movie, though, which I was surprised by, because I don't know how anyone walks away from this theater feeling anything other than bored. Definitely not in the top 5 worst. Exorcism super sucked. This was Russell Crowe in his flop era. It's also like the second Exorcist he played in the last, 2 years. The Exorcism was fun and I stand by it. How can you possibly stand by that? What happened? Did you walk into the theater, see the intro, and walk out? Because the intro is great. Like, the first, 15 minutes of the film, I thought it was pretty good. And then everything else is really bad. It's not the worst, though. Oh, it's far from the worst. This is definitely not in top 5. It's probably not even in top 5 worst horror movies of the year. But it's still just not good. Yeah, I know Russell Crowe's just collecting bags. I get it. Like, I'm not mad at him. In this movie, contrary to Craven, he actually did put in effort. Like, I do think Russell Crowe put in a good effort. Like, the possessions in there, he really did try with this. It's just the material was so flat to work with. It's just the movie itself didn't deserve him trying. This was M. Night Shyamalan's new movie. Apparently people really like this film. I don't know how, unless you just like watching concerts. Because half of this movie is a concert, and the second half, then it changed. I won't spoil it, I guess. This one's probably a little too new to get into spoilers. But you're fundamentally just watching M. Night Shyamalan's daughter have a concert. But it's definitely not in the top 5 worst. Oh wait, never mind. I was thinking of Pope's Exorcist. You see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? You couldn't even remember what fucking movie I was talking about with Russell Crowe and his exorcism roles because he takes so many and they're all so underwhelming and forgettable. You see it? You see what I'm saying now, Archive? Case in point. And here it is. Worst movie of the year, Borderlands. It has to be Borderlands. Borderlands is not only insulting to anyone that likes Borderlands, it's insulting to anybody with eyes. There is nothing to enjoy about it. There's not a single joke that gets told that could even elicit the slightest smile or even the semblance of a smirk. Every joke is just a complete flub, and it's just annoying. The CGI is bad. Everything about it is bad. It's gotta be the worst movie of the year. And also, $110 million to $120 million budget for this piece of shit. Which is the only good joke about it, to be honest. That huge box office blunder. Your review of this movie took place in a hotel room. It did. We all got together, including the Apex boys, and we went and watched Borderlands together. And everyone was mad at me for suggesting it. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be good. I knew going into it wasn't going to be good. I could have never imagined it would be that bad. That entire budget went to this star-studded cast for no reason. I still don't understand why you have a near 60-year-old woman playing this role. Like, nothing against her. Like, she was clearly just cashing in the bag, but Cate Blanchett is like the worst possible fit for the Siren. It's unbelievable. It's had nothing to do with the games either. Not that not even that's my biggest complaint. Even if you don't know anything about Borderlands, I don't think there's a single thing to like about this movie. Megalopolis is definitely in the top 5 worst films of the year. No doubt. Where would I put Megaflopolis? That's a tough one. I do still occasionally think about Adam Driver when he's talking to the girl and he starts hitting her with like the Reddit fedora tipping like explanation for, you know, her being a partier and him not being one or whatever. He's like, well, I actually have to crunch some quarks. As you see, I'm very busy running an empire. I'm building something that your feeble mind couldn't possibly comprehend. So why don't you go back to the club and get out of here? Like, it is fun bad in a lot of ways. Like, there are things to enjoy about the shittiness of Megalopolis, and I think that might save it from being the second worst film of the year. You skipped Afraid. Oh, you're right. Where was Afraid? It's not in my top 5 worst films of the year, but that movie was also pretty bad. This one's about AI. They basically just get an Alexa AI that starts to threaten them because she wants to be mom. It's pretty stupid. Not in my top 5 worst films of the year, but man, that's like something that your like uncle would pitch you on an idea for. Like, check this out. AI. It's evil. What do you think? And that's about as deep as the movie gets. Joker 2 is definitely in the top 5 worst of the year. And not because I think it's objectively worse than something like A Night Swim or An Imaginary, because it's not as bad as those. Like, speaking purely from like a outside perspective. But the disappointment of this movie and just how off the rails and how badly it missed the mark, it has to be in the top 5 worst of the year. Like, this is the most disappointing movie I think I've ever seen. Turning it into a musical, not even a good musical, didn't even have the fucking chutzpah to deliver good musical numbers. Tells a terrible story as well. God, and Todd Phillips, every time he opens his mouth, Christ. Ugh. Like, listening to an Amy Schumer routine is less painful. Everything Todd Phillips has to say about this movie just sucks. No, you guys just really didn't understand it. You see, he's not the Joker. This isn't a movie about the Joker. How deep. How very profound, Todd. And then that brings us to Craven. Alright, Craven doesn't breach top 5 worst of the year. Bad movie for sure. But definitely not worse than Madam Web. I think this will probably be our... Oh, this is 6. Someone's going to have to get... Oh, wait, no. Yeah, wait, someone's going to have to get cut. Oh, shit. Also, apparently Craven opened to a lower box office start than even Madam Web. Which I don't think anyone's surprised by. Damn. What would I cut here? Rebel Moon Part 2, Madam Web, Tarot, Borderlands, Megalopolis, or Joker? It'd probably be Rebel Moon Part 2. That'd probably just be outside of my top 5 worst films of the year. I don't think it stands up to these kings of garbage. Rebel Moon is worse than Tarot. Okay, let's not get carried away. All right, now we're just spewing some nonsense. I hate Rebel Moon as much as the next guy. I wake up extra early to have more hours in the day to shit on Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon series. But I'm not going to let that cloud my eyes here and say that it's worse than Tarot. That's ridiculous. I'm going to have to cut this. It didn't make the top 5 worst films of the year. These are our top 5. So now the order. I think the order would go Joker at the 5 slot for worst film of the year. Probably next would be Tarot at number 4. Then Megalopolis at number 3. Madam Web at number 2. And Borderlands at number 1. I think that's how I'd do it. I don't ironically watch Tarot over Rebel Moon because at least it's short and has no slow-mo, which is its only saving grace. But we can't look at it that way. Brother, you don't have to hard sell me on how shitty Rebel Moon is. I have an entire note that an entire note page dedicated to everything I hate about Rebel Moon. I know. But on my integrity as a shit connoisseur, a fucking poop sommelier, I have to look at this from an objective lens. Which is why Red 1's not here, and it's why Rebel Moon Part 2's not here. So you would rather sit down and watch Rebel Moon over Tarot. If I had to, I would sit down and watch Rebel Moon over Tarot. If you fucking forced me to, I would. Which actually defeats the entire point of your question, because if I was forced to, I wouldn't have a choice. If I was given 2 choices, I had to sit down and watch either Tarot or Rebel Moon, I would pick Rebel Moon, is the point I'm trying to make. Brother, I would have to smoke the crack you found in that shitty hotel. You know what? It's my top 5 shittiest films of the year, and I'm sticking to it. Rebel Moon did not make it. It's number 6. It just missed it. It fucking tickled on it. It was close. Tarot is worse. I can't believe we're splitting hairs over what's worse, Rebel Moon or Tarot. Zack Snyder thinks Rebel Moon is groundbreaking. The director of Taro probably did it for money. I cannot believe we're still locked in this Thunderdome in fucking Debate Club. We cannot be taking these extenuating factors, these other variables from outside of the film itself. Zack Snyder is delusional when it comes to Rebel Moon. He said like over 1 billion people have watched Rebel Moon. He said it's like bigger than Barbie or whatever. I know. He's a clown when it comes to Rebel Moon. It doesn't change the fact that Taro is a worst movie. This is a top 5 worst movies on their merit, not the director huffing his own farts. Should I give Borderlands a shot if I like bad movies? No, there's nothing to enjoy about Borderlands, even as a fun bad movie. It's miserable.